In Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, sending you the frequencies of oneness and truth. You are now tuned into Of the Sun Suncast weekly podcast, bringing you elevated topics focused on expanding ourselves and humanity into becoming truth and moving into oneness. So shall we call forth the frequency of truth? And coming live all the way from One Mind, I'm Tavares of the Sun, quantum light property clearing instructor. We have LaOta of the Sun, the architect of the Sun, and Jessica of the Sun, an ally and advocate of the Sun. So Lakesh and Veritas, folks.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
Yes. So today's topic, we're talking about marriage and the connectivity of science and spirituality. And personally, this is something that's very close to me. You all know how I get hyped up about science, both of you, Jessica in class and LaOta. So we're going to approach it from a few different standpoints. And one of the things that I'd like to point out is that the connectivity between the two is that, from my understanding, they're both pointing in the same direction or attempting to describe the same phenomena of reality. And one of the ways that I was first noticing this was through geometry. And we all understand that the symbol for oneness is the circle, also known as the monad. So imagine a circle with a dot in the center, and ancient civilizations and cultures, this symbol has been utilized for quite some time to symbolize the connection of consciousness and how we are the makers of our reality, that dot being the creator and that circle around it being the reality that's created by the creator. So that was a spiritual understanding by ancients. And then you take it into science. In today's day and age, science says that creation started from something as small as a grain of salt and then expanded and exploded into what we see today as planets, stars, galaxies, our planet, all the different organisms and life forms that originated from this single point in time space. So again, for me, I'm like, it looks like you all are talking about the same thing. And this has been so integral in my understanding, along with quantum light property clearing and expanding me in a variety of directions. So any thoughts, you all, on this idea of science and how long it's been around, but also how the ancients have been using spirituality and how they're pretty much talking about the same thing or trying to describe or understand the same thing?
Let's look first at how all of us commonly understand the defined understanding of what science is and what spirituality is. The science, if you look up the common understandings, is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. This is very important. This is our agreed understanding of what science is. Spirituality is the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul, as opposed to the material or the physical things. And so in us seeing that there's two different ways of experiencing an idea, this could be, as you say, one thing looked at from two different perspectives. But now that we have the agreed upon understanding, I think it's much easier for us to move forward in our discussion. Did you have something on this, Jessica?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that struck me as very interesting more recently in the quantum light property clearing class was all of the science that's in the textbook. And these were theories and concepts that I didn't even know about, but I never would have equated the science with this practice. So it's amazing to know just how deeply rooted in everything of the sun does that the science is and its presence. And one of the more recent examples I would love to use, if any of you haven't seen this, you've got to check it out. The 100th monkey theory video that was, I have to give credit to Tavares's beautiful video handiwork. But it talks about the science behind critical mass and how critical mass thought forms are cultivated by using monkeys as an example on a remote island in Japan. And it's something I never would have thought about before, but the science explains it so logically. So it really permeates everything that Of the Sun teaches. It's sort of like the underlying current of everything.
It's true. The current understanding of quantum physics and non-locality, it really is what you're speaking about with the 100 monkey theory. But these things are all connected in time and space. And as our scientists experiment and observe, they don't actually discover, they become aware of what already exists. And this should be understood that it's like America wasn't discovered. It already existed with life teeming without the help of anyone else. And so this is the same principle, that your unawareness and your ability to become aware is really the process of science. The rest of it is, the equations equal. In our looking at separating science from spirituality, we make a separation that doesn't exist. We are, the science is in the search of awareness of what the universe and divinity is through examination and experimentation, observation. But all the algorithms already exist. Everything Einstein discovered was already an algorithm in the universe. It already existed. And instead of discovery, we became aware of it through his awareness of it, through the pursuit of it. And I think this is something often completely misunderstood and not acknowledged, that all of this is real, but it becomes real as you become aware. And so, especially in situations like when people are looking at predictions or talking about psychic phenomena or things of that nature, and they find it so easy to dismiss it. But the truth of the matter is that the future is constantly changing its potentials exponentially based on what's being thought. So a soul is born into this world who already has a history of a footprint or a potential in a certain direction. And that potential then can be calculated out and seen into the current time. And sometimes there are many, many potentials. There really is no known future or outcome. It all has to do with if the person continues to move in that direction, or if they change directions or stop moving in that direction. That depends on what the actual outcome will play out to be. So that should be something you can see. Tavares has something to say about that.
I'm getting excited. I'm so excited. Okay, so that concept reminded me, and this is scientific evidence to support that understanding of when we think differently, we affect the outcome of future trajectories. So I'm not sure if you all have heard of something called the double slit experiment. And essentially, scientists were shooting electrons with a laser through a slit. And one of the things that they noticed is that when they would not observe the particle being shot through, this is essentially the experiment that brought forth the idea, is it a wave or a particle? When we're observing it, and how the observer can affect the outcome. And the idea of consciousness connected with physical reality, and of course supporting the idea of how we have control over trajectories. There's this saying that LaOta uses, and I love it because it's so simple, but it's the truth. You think differently, you'll get something differently, plain and simple. And that has stayed with me for so long. But also this scientific evidence to support, hey, this is a thing, that's taking place at the lower levels of reality, the atomic and subatomic particles. So that was something that came to mind as you were conveying that idea, LaOta.
It's actually quite accurate, whether you have the experiment or not, that this is a free choice universe. Every aspect of free choice creates trillions of free decisions, which create vast numbers of strong potentials, depending on how much energy is put into the potential. So it's the same thing happens in the idea of a property clearing. If the property has had the same free choice mental expressions of poverty or abuse or depression or despicable me or any of these kind of thoughts, if that is, then the potential will be the outcome that is what that house has. Now, when we bring to bear the free choice of the clearer to disrupt that abuse or disrupt that anger or disrupt that despicable me energy or depression energy, a new potential exists and a new outcome can come forward because there's a new thought.
Yeah.
So this is, as Jessica was, this is the reference to property clearing. We have to understand that arising out of every choice in the free choice universe is a new potential to change the outcome. We are actually seeing that in our experience on July 17th in 2020 in our world, in America, on the globe, on Earth, in this galaxy and the solar system. Because it doesn't stop, there's no borders. Every elevated, beautiful, exquisite thought we have travels out into the galaxy, the universe, and the greater experience for everything. Isn't that a wonderful thought?
Yeah, I kind of got goosebumps.
Very much so.
I'd like to bring up another idea, and this is something that I came across that touches on the idea of quantum light property clearing, but more so helping convey the understanding of just how profound the effects of our environments are on us. So there's a biologist named Bruce Lipton. I encourage you to do the study or check it out. And this guy, he was studying cells in a petri dish, and he had his electron microscope tinkering around, and he would take one cell out of its environment or the petri dish and place it in a completely different environment. And over time, after observing, he noticed that the cell began to take on the traits of its environment. It literally became the environment. It adapted and adopted, whether it was for survival or the way of gathering the nutrients it needed. But the fact is that it really showed how the environment affects the biology. And when you scale this up all the way to a full human that's composed of billions and upon billions of cells, it's the same law that's corresponding through every level. And think about when we go into a space, we feel the space. We can feel what it feels like to be in a space that was imprinted with joy. There's laughter. We know what it feels like if there was an argument. We're like, I think it's time to go. So again, this idea of the biology is affected by the environment, but at the same time, we can affect our environments and our biology primarily through our thoughts and our thinking. So you all have any thoughts on that? I feel like LaOta could probably take it deeper.
This is very important that you brought this forward. The confluence of the energies in the environment, of course, affect the consciousness. All things are conscious. There is no such thing as lower life. Our bodies are conscious. Our cells are conscious. They all have their divine directive, and it all works in unity with the environment. So a very practical way of looking at this is that COVID-19 is all over the earth. You know, people in Africa are sending in samples, people in India, people in all over the world know that there's COVID there. And because of that, we are already evolving. Our bodies are already making the necessary adjustments at the molecular level. The cells are already making adjustments. We are already mutating ourselves to change, as we are aspects of life, just as lizards or trees or flowers make the adjustment to change and try to get out of the way and make adjustments for poisons in their environment. So this is a very poignant example of how everything is conscious, everything has a divine directive to live. And if you cannot live in the environment in the way that you are put into the environment, then the mechanism of consciousness itself will shift and evolve to make a better chance for life to exist, as life is the first directive, that it is the most important thing, and the thing that should be most cherished is life itself. So everything's prime directive is to live and
Yes.
to continue to live and to evolve and to live greater, more, larger, more extended. That is the directive. And everything in consciousness is moving that way, good and bad. We at Of the Sun are often, people often ask us about what we accept and what we don't accept, but we are like the sun. We shine on the good and the bad. We encourage those who are not moving towards positive to stop so they can continue to have the light of the sun. However, we're not in judgment. We're in expansion and inclusion. We are the confluence of the ideas and in harmony with nature, in harmony with the prime directive to live. And so when you cite a scientific study or a person who has done that, our point of view is they have become aware of the algorithm that already existed.
Yes. I like that. It's a refreshing thing. And of course, the example that you gave about Columbus, you know, how can you discover something that's already existed?
That was a very relevant example, yeah. Relevant to the epoch.
Does that inspire any thoughts from you, Jessica?
Absolutely. You know, you and I had a conversation recently about all you have is your thoughts. And the conversation actually began about wealth. We were talking about the concept of wealth. And it really, coming from all of this, it really doesn't matter where you are in one specific blip of time. What you have to create with are your thoughts at any given time. And I think that kind of summarizes a little bit of what both of you were saying earlier. So what I've been trying to do lately is just tell myself that all the situations surrounding me are malleable in many ways by my thoughts, and my circumstances for sure are changeable by my thoughts. Does that ring a bell?
That's absolutely the case. Every potential or trajectory that is possible for you is created from the potential and trajectories of the thoughts that you have already launched into the field, the magnetic field around us that is from what all things arise. It is the stuff of the universe. And once it lands there, and it also speaks very directly to the science that Russian scientists have recently discovered, that words are connected directly to our DNA. And that is another idea that even in religious context, you know, first there was the word and then there was creation. All of this is the same thing. Everything lands in the potential that is from what creation comes from, and it is molded by the thoughts or the words. It is abracadabra. I speak my world into being is the literal interpretation of that. So our potential to change things, as in property clearing or in the work that we do in soul clearings or any of this, is based on science, because science is based on the awareness of the divine in the universe. Science is the search, or should be the search for the divine in the universe. So people do get off track a little bit with that. This is not about ideologies. This is not religion reliving old ideas, reliving old ideas. It's not about that. The algorithm is find out what's there by researching deeply, going into your soul, calling it forward. I want wealth. Let me look into wealth. Is wealth the leaves on the trees that keep me shaded and provide my oxygen? Is wealth only my understanding and interpretation of dollar bills? Is wealth the same in India as it is in America? Is there wealth in having someone love and support you? What is the wealth? If you relegate yourself to only finances, you are aware of a very thin line of the potential that wealth has to offer you. However, it all still goes back to your thoughts and you continuing to project into the field so that it can come together with the power in the field and produce the outcome. So any thoughts of lack or limitation or fear that you won't have anything constantly undermine your own expectation of having something. So if you're afraid you won't have anything, you have just lost 10 pounds of wealth, so to say. And every time you think a fearful thought, you lose more ground. And every time you think a positive thought that you know that you can have whatever you want, you gain 25 feet of progress, so to say. So this is science. It can be proven. It can be calculated. The universe is mathematical. We can give you the trajectories. We can calculate out to the fourth decimal point how close it is. But if you stop, it may or may not be able to come into full potential in that moment. It may take 2 years if you forget to do your morning practice, if you forget to not be in lack, if you um, if you speak the language out loud or in your head that's connected to your DNA that has the power to bring forward, to speak your world into being. So you can speak your world right into poverty, or you can speak your world into abundance. And of course, there's scientific studies that I've mentioned before that show that if you spend your time, if all of your time is spent with colleagues and friends and your time after work with people of a certain income, that within 5 years, because frequency is everything and frequency is contagious, you will be within 10% of their income. So that applies not only to their income, it applies to health, it applies to security, it applies to sadness, it applies to abuse. If you hang around people who are sad and depressed and abused, you may find yourself slipping and sliding into that potential because frequency is contagious, or you may find yourself in a different financial bracket because you're with people who are solvent financially. They have thoughts of abundance. They can move into higher projections. They've learned to discipline their fears and doubts about money or anything. So these are scientific studies that are truly the algorithm of success that's in the universe that the scientists have become aware of. You see?
Yes, definitely. What's standing out to me is this idea of frequency and how it's everything, and that's a common term that's used by people who are spiritual or scientists, something that's agreed upon. And what I really liked was this idea of that you explained about wealth and how there's so many ways we can experience it or look at the frequency. So it's like in essence, frequency is almost like a diamond prism. There's so many different facets of it. It's like, which one do you want to look through? Or how many of them are you choosing to look through? And it's a similar idea with science and spirituality. We're looking through two different facets to observe the same idea. Definitely frequency, it seems like that's like one of the base ideas that we would focus on, would you say?
Yes. I was just thinking as you were speaking, this applies to health as well. So many people at this time are sick, and in their illness, they often become sicker because they can't gather the necessary thoughts of wellness to bring themselves back to this idea of wellness. And so some people actually lose their lives because they get lost in the frequency of illness, which was a potential because of thoughts they had already, or because they didn't have thoughts of health and they're um, caught up in the confluence of everything that's in the atmosphere around them, the frequencies around them. People around them are slack and self-medicating or prescription medicating, and they're looking at video games and they're staring at the television all day and they're smoking cigarettes and they're getting high. And so they have lost their rhythm to health. So then the COVID comes along and the rhythm of health is not there. So there's nothing to support them in that experience. And this is important for us to see that it is not that the opportunity for free choice is not there, it's that it's not exercised.
Ooh, mic drop. That's powerful. And again, I'm seeing how based on the example that you gave, the frequency or the base frequency of a person living that type of lifestyle, where the universe is literally responding to it based on the frequency. And it made me think of what we do within the event soul clearing process when we're looking for negative motivators, and specifically base frequencies. For anyone who doesn't know, these are base frequencies that the soul has been imprinted with for countless lifetimes, and it's also been perpetuated by family and the lineage. So we've more than likely grown up within an environment that has been based on these type of frequencies. For example, things like fear, which everyone has, and working through doubt, appeasement, guilt, self-punishment, zealous desire, coveting, you name it. There's so many. And again, this is one of the perspectives or the approach that of the sun takes, where we're looking at what's the root, because it's the frequency that's influencing the narrative. That's my understanding of it.
That's true. It's like everything you expect then means that everything you hear, everything you understand, every conversation you have supports whatever your expectation of your belief system is. So that you are choosing to choose the same thing over and over and over again, and choosing to ignore the same things over and over again. And that's what happens in science. Often we're looking to exclude and only observe certain things. So we're always, or our scientists are always confirmed in what they started their belief out to be, because they never are open to the greater experience.
Yeah, so there's a limitation right there. They've capped themselves, which we can all see with, well, maybe not all of us, but looking at mainstream science, I definitely can see that, where there's this limitation from a Newtonian theory, everything's a machine. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, you can only get so much, versus everything is consciousness, everything is alive, where that hope opens up a whole nother world of experiences.
And that's one of the reasons why we understand ourselves and of the sun to be a living, breathing, pulsating organism. We are not an organization, because we recognize that we are greater than just a collection of things called organization. We are more than that. And that's really important. So this whole idea of the study of science and how things work is truly the study of the divine and the way the universe works. How much our doctors and scientists become aware of it has to do with their ability to broaden their scopes and remove the ceiling, and how deeply they're willing to go. What exists already, there is nothing that we will discover that doesn't already exist as an algorithm in the universe. Whether Einstein identifies it or Christopher Columbus identified it, it's just as mundane. You know, it doesn't, it existed even though the Spaniards didn't know. You know? So many things that people rile up against and they're so upset about, and it disturbs them so much, like psychic phenomena or channeling or people who are readers, all of these things, um, they should be looked at from the perspective of potential, trajectories, the confluence of energy, not that you give over all of your thoughts and all of your energy to another idea, but that you know that you're part of the organizing or organism that creates the outcome, and that someone is not going to tell you what's going to happen, is that they can share with you what the potentials are, and then your thoughts can bring it home, or the potentials have already executed and the event has already happened. But the reason people aren't happy about this is because they have a responsibility in it too.
Mm.
And so when in religions and in different forms of organized thought, the tendency to turn your responsibility over to another always then leaves you disappointed. And of course, without the control over your own outcomes. So the idea would be to know how these things work and what your part in it is. And then there's no disappointment. There's just more work or less work, or observing an awareness of the work that took place when something manifests. This would help, this perspective would help everyone be more respectful of those who can see potential, those who can read what the potentials are, can calculate it out, that this is science. This is the way the universe is organized, to bring a confluence of potentials together to produce an outcome. So that is the events. And this is what many people have problems with, but there is no science that does not support this.
That's interesting. That brought up some thoughts of specifically with people who get readings, psychic readings, and they tell them, the psychic says, oh, you're going to get this job or marry this person or have this experience. And when it doesn't happen, the person who is being read goes, oh, that wasn't accurate. But it shows that when we change thought, when we shift those trajectories, or we can pull it to us, like you said. And the key understanding is the responsibility. I think that's very important for people to take that level of responsibility in the creation process, and having the understanding that, hey, you're just as much a part of this in terms of your thought process and your actions and behaviors than what's being presented. Because again, potentialities and trajectories, they change as we change.
Absolutely. And this works with the physical organism or the environmental organism that also is conscious. We are water bags living in a water world, you know, and so all of us are connected through our water. So it's kind of, our mothers have an umbilical sac, and we're inside of that. Then we're born into a world that's inside of a clouded water experience, that's inside of a galaxy that has the same algorithm. The intelligence of water exists that way. So all of this is connected. There is no separation. There is no separation. So we can tap into that and our greater potential before we emerged into this lifetime, and when we exit this lifetime and we reemerge into the next cycle. All of that is the greater potential. All of that is the trajectory for wealth or for happiness or for relationships. We are not just the aspect that we are looking at in human form in this moment. We are greater than that, and all of those trajectories count. And they all can be changed by our will to change them because we can choose to do so. We just forget that we can choose. We think that because it looks the way it looks, and politics looks the way it looks, and religion looks the way it looks, and humanity looks the way it looks, that we don't have our eye on the future. We should keep our eye on what we would like to see, the wholesomeness, the honor, the integrity, what is absent from our world. We should put our eyes on that and bring that into being, keep our eyes on the future and never give up, and never give up our power to do so, because it's not quite possible for that to happen anyway. It's just one more misunderstanding. So I think that is the greater idea here, is that science or spirituality, everything is free choice. We should choose a better future, whether we're doing it from the point of view of test tubes or we're doing it from the point of view of meditation. Let us choose a better outcome for humanity through our thoughts of elevated men and women moving forward for the good of all. So I think this is a very important understanding. Do you have anything, Jessica?
Oh, yes, definitely. I actually have a quote that I wanted to share since, spoiler alert, there's a little project we're working on right now around quotes, which you will find more about later. But I would love to share this quote. It is from the QLPC, the Quantum Light Property Clearing book. And it says, science has realized what mystics have claimed throughout the centuries, that the universe is indeed coherent, unified, and organized around unifying patterns. Everything we see to the contrary is a distortion of the original design and must be properly harmonized if we are to truly conquer illness, whether it be physical, emotional, or mental. Because science has explained and identified these ideas, they can no longer be denied.
Yes, it is in the lexicon. It is in the environment. If you turn your back away from it, you lose. You lose. You lose ground in your own reality. You lose power in your own experience. All of your cells are now no longer in agreement with truth, and you lose. There's no way to be other than the way you were designed without having loss. If you are angry or abusive, you lose. If you are irritable and disruptive, you lose. If you allow yourself to be sick and don't learn from it and grow out of it, things will change for you. And if you get caught in the rhythm of not knowing to think the thought, then you have the lesson for next time, that when you come back, when you reemerge, that you'll be looking for something different in your experience, where you will think the thoughts that will keep you alive, keep you nourished, keep you in wealth. Because the wealth is all of that: your health, your environment, your ability to be free, which includes finances. But if you draw lines between it, you say, well, wealth is only my paycheck and what's in the bank. It's not my relationship, or it's not I can live in a place that's toxic and still be wealthy. That's not possible. Those are incongruent concepts. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
That totally makes sense. And I just realized we should do an episode on congruency. All of you listening can tell us what you think about that. Feel free to comment under the video on YouTube.
Well, I would encourage everyone to be in the field of study of science. Bring yourself to the awareness and experiment and examine and observe how the truth operates in your life. Call the truth in, become a researcher of truth, ask for the truth, and then you'll be in the spirituality. And it will all become evident because everything is self-verifying, and the potentials are then much greater that you'll experience wealth in all ways, which has to do with your own acceptance of your multidimensional experience, that you cooperate in the landscape of the ecosystem of your environment, in your physical body, that ecosystem, and the ecosystem that your body walks about in on the planet, and then the greater ecosystem of where the planet is on, in our solar system, that you are an aspect of all of that. And it's not too great an idea to understand the connections. Everything is holographic. In every gram of everything is the whole of it. When someone looks in your eyes in iridology, they can see your entire nervous system. When people do your acupuncture, they can see all of the rhythms of all of the energy systems. When people do reflex on your feet, they can touch all of these are all aspects of the whole, or the hologram of it. So that applies to your love affairs. It applies to your bank account. It applies just as much as it does to someone reading your tongue or your face. In every aspect, every gram of us is the whole of us, whether we're looking from Pluto or we're looking from Earth. This is important because then you can feel responsible for bringing forward balance that's needed in our world, as we are in a world out of balance. And that is a real thing.
It's very powerful. This level of awareness and the level of responsibility that's required to move into that power. And it's based on my understanding, it's like a level of godhood, creator. And I'd like to touch on something that you mentioned, this idea of calling for the future, or how we want the future to be, and not just so fixed on what circumstances look like in the present. And it made me think of the phrase how, when you share some information with a person about, oh, you could do this. Here's an opportunity for something different. And they say, oh, but, the reality of what I'm going through, and it's, limitation instantaneously. And this idea that they can do nothing to change what lies before them, but based on the facts and the understandings that we've shared, we have the power to shift that through shifting our thoughts, whether this is done individually or collectively. And also, as Jessica mentioned, the idea of the 100 monkey theory, critical mass, and I can see how this idea, if we had more people calling for the truth, that can be our future collectively. Yes. I mean, it's that simple, and it works individually and collectively.
This idea of calling for the truth, that we say, call to see the truth. When we look through our eyes at what is in front of us, if it's our lover or a child, we should be calling, shall I see truth in you? And they can accept it or they don't have to accept it. When we hear the podcast, this podcast, or television or radio, we should be calling to hear the truth in what's being said. And then we should develop from that the courage to actually call forth from within us, up into our throats and out of our mouth, the truth to be spoken without fear. So that we are, in fact, one with the truth. If that's a future idea, then so be it. But let it be our potential. Let it be that we don't look at people on television and think they're lying. That's a lie. That's not the truth. Why are they saying that? That doesn't make sense. Let us say, I hear the truth. I see the truth. I am bringing forth the truth. Let that be the reality. When someone says, their reality doesn't match, they're in the unreal aspect of their own creation. That's not reality. What is real is right and balanced. Everything else is something else.
Let our potential be our reality. Yeah, there's this quote that you have. Clearly, we got quotes for days, hence why we're making a book. We are the makers and unmakers of our realities. And the power within it, where, again, we can call forth what we desire. We can literally shift the future. I think it's imperative. I think about children. Like if children had these understandings, if parents, of course, were teaching these type of concepts, all right, daughter, son, where's the truth in that? Can you see the truth within this
That's
experience
right.
of what's happening?
Is the parent free enough to challenge the children to see the truth in what they say? Because it requires a certain amount of clarity from the parent to make sure they speak what's true or be willing to say, you're right. I wasn't quite accurate in what I said there. Let me share the truth of that. Are you prepared to do that? That would mean that you were prepared to investigate and examine truth at a different level than our world has shown itself to be. As a politician has shown the truth, instead of backing out of the room and deflecting it with somebody else, they'd be saying, yes, that's accurate. That is what I said, and that is not fully what should have been said. And then they make the correction. So every human parent who would do that would have to be prepared to stand in the truth and then make the necessary adjustments. And so that's a thing, isn't it?
Definitely.
So I am of the thought that our studies into science, into the way things work, should be our studies into divinity. It should be our studies into the universe. It should be, as you said, Tavares, our studies into the divine and ourselves. Let that be our science. I'm banging on the table.
It's kind of like people when they clap after every word to let you know this is real. Feel every piece.
Are you clap talking, Taurus?
Yes, ma'am.
This is an excellent topic. We may want to visit this idea again. Of the Sun is a friend of science. We're in love with the science that shows expansion and evolution. We're in love with the idea that science and the truth are really one. Our awareness is not always shared, but we are encouraging everyone to look for what is right in everything. Find the right in all things and let that be what you move forward with. If it's science, if that's the way you're orientated, if you're orientated towards religion, find the right in it and move forward with that. Remember, the sun shines on everyone. So I think this may be a good way for us to wrap up our day today with this conversation. We hope you have been inspired or had a thought that was energizing, and we would be happy to hear your comments.
Most definitely. So for those who are tuning in, leave your comments in the YouTube page. Let us know what you think of these ideas. Share some of your experiences. Let's keep this dialogue going. And of course, we have plenty more to share on this topic and many other topics, so stay tuned. Jessica, any final thoughts?
Stay congruent, stay in truth, and just realize that whatever your present circumstances are, you have power, and that is your thoughts. So use that power. That's my advice.
I think I know what next week's topic will be. Congruency.
Congruency, there you go.
Yes, definitely. Well, again, we thank you all for tuning in to the Of the Sun Suncast, and may you all continue calling forth the truth within your experience. May we see the truth in everything. May we hear the truth, and may we speak the truth. In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.
In Lakesh and Veritas.